Welcome all. We're thrilled you're here. I'd like this to be an interactive meeting. Just chime in with questions at any time. CASA program is a national program. There are CASAs in every single state in the country. It is a very effective way to give children a voice in court, as well as make sure that someone is looking after them and the services that they may need. And here in New Hampshire, the CASA program, which has been going for 30 years, run by the same individual, our president and CEO, Marty Sink, is such a successful program that the state legislature actually enacted a law that requires DCYF or the courts to see if a CASA advocate can be found first. If not, then a paid guardian ad litem will be. And you know, the difference is these paid guardian ad litems many times will have dozens of cases, and they'll see that child once before they go in the court. CASAs are required to see their child once a month. They get involved with all the players, if you will, in that child's life, and they really are doing a service for these children to guide them forward. We have a great line that we use. It's ordinary people doing extraordinary things, and now during extraordinary times.
As an advocate, you'll gather information through engagement with the children, their parents, their foster parents, extended family, school teachers, doctors, therapists. You'll develop a relationship with that child or sibling group that is singular because you're the one person on that case that is there for them and them alone. When one of our CASAs, Trish, introduced herself to the 16-year-old she was going to be working with, the girl responded, "Finally, someone there for me." As officers of the court, CASAs provide a judge with as much objective information as possible so they can make a sound, informed decision for the future of these children. Our family court judges have the utmost respect for CASAs in their courtroom. They always take time to read the CASA's report and take their recommendations to heart. CASAs share the same status as all others on the case. You're a full party and receive the respect that goes with that. As the one constant on the case, the CASA becomes the case historian and is often called upon by the newly assigned judge to help bring them up to speed. CASA's one-on-one advocacy provides the best chance for abused children to find safe, permanent homes. It's important to know that volunteering with CASA will probably be very different from any volunteer work that you've done in the past. Our volunteers tell us that they came to CASA to get involved in a deeper, more meaningful way. CASA empowers ordinary people to accomplish extraordinary things for these children. They also tell us that in transforming the lives of these children, they have transformed their own. CASA training and CASA volunteering helps you grow emotionally and intellectually, deepening your empathy, compassion, tolerance, and acceptance. One volunteer said, "If everyone in the world could take this training, we could solve so many of our current problems easily." Another volunteer who retired from high-level positions in both the military and the private sector said that his work with CASA was the most meaningful, significant thing he has done in his life. As a CASA, you'll help a child change their story, and in doing so, help end the cycle of abuse and neglect within their family. When you accept a case with CASA, our hope is that you'll be able to see it through to the end. That's typically 2 to 3 years. On average, volunteers spend 10 to 15 hours a month, with higher hours at the onset and lower hours toward the end. You'll visit your case children at least monthly and touch base with all other case parties as needed. Before court hearings, which are 30 to 90 days apart, you'll submit a court report to your CASA program manager for the two of you to review together. You'll be completely supported throughout this process. You'll have the entire CASA organization behind you. One of the things I most appreciated during my time as a CASA volunteer was the flexibility. With the exception of scheduled court hearings, I was able to do the work when and where it fit into my life. If this sounds like it might be something you'd like to take on, here's the process. First, complete the online application, which includes your personal references and essays, which serve as both a writing sample and a way to get to know you better. If it appears will be a good match, we'll invite you to an interview, a question and answer session that lasts about an hour and a half. If it's still looking like will be a good match, we'll invite you to training. I know it sounds an awful lot like online dating. Our training team will provide you with 40 hours of pre-service training. Kelly and Molly have worked hard to ensure that the training is engaging, fun, creative, and thorough. It's a combination of Google Classroom and Zoom. The groups are small enough that you develop a bond with your fellow classmates. Toward the end of the training, you'll choose what courts you want to work from, and based on what you choose, be assigned a program manager and possibly a peer coordinator. Once a new case arrives from that court, your program manager will contact you about accepting that case. All of CASA's work now is being accomplished virtually. Our advocates have been adept at developing ways to engage with their kids. This has included Zoom cooking lessons, reading books together, chatting, or watching a movie together. With the warmer weather, CASAs have been doing outside meetups while maintaining safe physical distance. Even CASAs who joined us after COVID have been able to build positive relationships through virtual and physical distance means. Court proceedings have been either telephonic or by video conference since mid-March. While it's different than actually being in court, it's equally effective. Some courts are holding hearings at this time, but masks are required and proper physical distance is maintained. We know that it can feel daunting to advocate for abused and neglected children, especially in the midst of a pandemic. If you have questions and concerns, you're not alone, but many of these concerns will vanish once the work of being an advocate begins. Here's how one volunteer now addresses the question she had before getting involved. How will I find the time? It is there. How will I find the words? They will come. Will this act of volunteerism break my heart? It fills it. Will I enjoy the work? I love it. Will I make a difference? I know that I do. Will I have any regrets? Only that I didn't begin sooner. Some say that this child is lucky to have me in her life. The truth is, the blessing is mine. If you feel that being a CASA is right for you, please know that children need you more now than ever, and we're ready to have you join us.
My current case has 3 boys. There are 3 boys involved, and they're not old enough to sit still, and it makes it really difficult to talk to them, but we're still being successful in connecting and interacting. Being a CASA requires a huge amount of empathy. It requires empathy for the kids and concern for the kids, but it also requires us to be empathetic towards the parents. Because as we move through a case, the ultimate goal is reunification of that family. It's not to get the kids adopted, not to get them into guardianship or anything. It's to reunify the family. And sometimes we're very successful, and other times we're not. And we are part of the CASA, is part of the team to help make that happen. We manage to work with great people. I think we work with great people. People like Joe and Diane, the program managers, and all of those folks. I have a huge respect for the folks at the Division of Children, Youth, and Families. The training program that you will get the opportunity to go through if you join up is 40 hours long, and I call that basic training. It teaches us the basic blocking and tackling of what you have to do as you move your way through the case. And at certain points in a case, when it's more complicated or something new is going to happen to you, there's a specialized training program that allows you to really focus on what may be called a permanency hearing, whether you're deciding to keep the kids with the parents or to move them towards adoption. And there's another one when you approach termination of parental rights, which is a very complex process, and it should be, but it's not something you're going to do every day. I like numbers, so I'm going to share some with you from 2019. In 2019, 951 families in the state of New Hampshire benefited from the services associated with CASA, or provided by CASA. 1,533 kids had a CASA by their side, going through these really challenging times. And one of the things we don't think about, some of these children, they suffer from PTSD. And oftentimes, kids in this situation are more at risk than soldiers on a battlefield. During this period of time, these cases were closed. 138 were closed through reunification. The kids could go back to their parents. 134 were closed as a result of adoption. And 48 children were either placed with a family member, which is good, or guardianship. Then finally, what's the CASA team look like, and what did we do during this time frame of 2019? There were 618 volunteers. And I had the opportunity to be at a meeting much like this, only with people in a room, with Marty Sink, the CEO of CASA. And I said, Marty, how many more volunteers do we need to be successful in New Hampshire? 100? She said, no, we need 200. And I kind of went, holy smokes. And then she said, will you talk for me? I said, sure, I'll do road shows for you. I'll be happy to. In 2019, we donated 82,000 hours. We made 12,000 visits and drove 628,000 miles. So we're everywhere. We do everything. And keeping in mind that our goal very clearly is to keep kids safe and bring them into a place that they can thrive and be successful as they move through their lives.
Di, do you want to just speak for a little minute about the support that particularly new advocates will get? So you finish training, you're ready to go, you get a phone call from CASA about your first case. Can you just talk about that a little bit and how well supported the advocates are?
Well, I think whenever you have a question, there's somebody there to answer it. There's no such thing as a dumb question. I'd say 98% of the people that come into our program have never done anything like this in their lives. A lot of people think you have to be an ex-social worker or a former attorney in order to do this. We have people from all walks of life doing this. So you've got your peer coordinator to ask questions of, you have your program manager to ask questions of. If you were ever in a situation where you needed an answer right away and you called and your program manager wasn't available, there are 15 other program managers that can answer your question for you. We all go through the CASA training. We all know what it's all about. So really, you have the entire organization behind you and supporting you.
And Diane, maybe you could review again how CASA becomes involved.
Sure. So it is the Division of Children, Youth, and Families, the social work unit in the state that actually investigates these cases. And their job is really to ensure child and family safety. So they work with these parents, they work with these families, they get services in place for them so that they can correct whatever their missteps are. It's when the children, when it becomes clear that they're unsafe, that they're removed. And when the division does that, they provide the court with a petition for removal. And it is actually the court that contacts CASA and says, we have a case coming in, we would like to get a CASA volunteer for it. Our program then has to look at it and determine if we have someone to give it to. If we do, we accept it. If we don't, we turn it back.
Other questions, thoughts about the application process, the interview process, how to be a CASA during COVID?
I try to reach out to applicants within 48 hours or so. We immediately get working on your references. We'll set you up with an interview. You know, after the interview, sometimes it's just waiting to hear from your references, which could take a couple of days.
You know, a few roadblocks die. You know, you've got a court scheduled hearing and you've got a sick kid at home. What
Sure. Emergencies crop up all the time for people. You just contact your program manager and let them know. we want to make sure that when we're expected in court, we're there. So you just let your program manager know, and they will get that court hearing covered for you.
I want to kind of come at that from two perspectives. The answer to that is no, because as the case gets painted out, it's very clear that, at least in my opinion, that the parents want to get us on their side, give us positive information, and pushing us away would not do that very well.
Yeah, okay.
I'm aware of a case that a colleague is working on that the parents don't want anything to do with him, but he gathers his information and presents, he writes a great court report, and he presents his report to the court.
You'll choose your courts as you get close to the end of your training. When that court sends over a new case to the program manager, they will call you to discuss the case with you. We'll make sure there's nobody on that case that you know personally. There are no conflicts of interest. You don't work with any of the parties. We want to make sure your comfort level is there. You are not technically assigned that case. You accept that case. And we'll do our best to match it up, like if you have a preference for working with teens. We love it when people have a preference for working with teens. They're a tough group to work with.
Yeah.
Some people only want to work with babies, so we try to match them up with whatever case suits them best. We want it to be a good match because we want you to see the case through to the end and then take another one. If any of you have any questions that come up for you after we close today, please feel free to email me directly. It's Diane, Diane, at CASANH.org.
Thank you.
I would also encourage you to go to the website and click on the volunteer drop down and read all of the information there, and that will give you some terrific insight into
There's a great video there as well, featuring some of our advocates.
Well, thank you again. We're thrilled you joined us. And if you have any questions, Diane at CASANH.org, and she'll get right back to you.
Thank you so much.
Thank you all.